we'll now directly move on to the next speaker. That is Dr. Anne Lau, our co-director of CUHK Center for Bioethics. She will be presenting on reimagining bioethics education in Hong Kong, challenges and opportunities. Dr. Lau, may I invite to speak?
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, I enjoyed the whole symposium a lot because I learned a lot from every speaker and also all the audience, the questions from the audience. And I must confess and declare that my approach in my presentation will be a little bit different from what we have heard this morning, because I personally basically focusing on bioethics education. I myself is a biomedical scientist by training, but with the chance to take up like different positions and roles in the Faculty of Medicine and also the School of Biomedical Sciences, I got the privilege to really get in touch in different education programs and included IBCHB program. And also, it is also my privilege to get in touch and walk into the bioethics area, I think 10 years ago, when I got a chance to really take up some teaching in bioethics and also learn in this area. So, well, when talking about like bioethics education, what we have heard in this morning is many areas that we think we can perfect, and also it is a matter of say what we experience in the actual clinical practice. Now, unavoidably, we may need to ask the questions. Okay, so how do we train our medical doctors and during their medical education? In what way that we deliver the ethics concept and also the bioethics education, both from the preclinical years and also into the clinical years, right? And after all, when I ask this question to my own, because I'm not trained in bioethics at the beginning, I was trained as a basic scientist. So the question is that when I was originally studying science, that basically ethics may not be the core things that I need to really study at the beginning, right? And after all, when I get in touch with the bioethics education, I found that there are many things that is quite relevant and articulate to my personal value that would basically could be quite something that imprinted in myself that since I was very young, right? And when you grow up, that the values has already established that maybe it can change, but maybe it cannot change, right? It's somehow quite shaping you to become like what you are when you're working. So when going back to the bioethics education, I think the Western countries like North America and also Europe, they started education in early time. I think most of you already know that because it stemmed from the World War II, and also so they started in like 1970s. And for Asia Pacific, like even though I know the earliest medical school in Asia is started in 80 something, right? But however, the bioethics education only started quite a later time at around 1990s. So when I move along the journey of bioethics education, I can't, I unavoidably ask myself a question is that I only need to focus on training the doctor and also introducing the bioethics in the medical curriculum. Okay. Now, however, when we look into every student, that basically they're also individuals and public, and they will be in touch on different health issues as well, life and death issues as well, not just because of their identity as a medical student or a doctor. They are also an individual, and also they have their families, they have the elderly in the home as well. So therefore, my observation is that somehow when I look in the general public, and also when there are so many different kinds of public policy being devised and also seeking for consultation, that the engagement of the public is really lacking indeed, right? So then what's happened is that we only need to focusing on medical education, or can we actually do a step more beyond that? And it's a matter of also the public education as well. Now, when looking into the bioethics education in the medical curriculum, it's quite clear that we hope to train altruistic, humane, compassion doctors, and also who can uphold professionalism. We would like to have, through education, to foster the ethical reasoning and decision-making in the context of medicine. So we hope that afterwards, the students will be able to understand professional values, and also they are equipped with the skills and also techniques to do the ethical analysis. And also, most importantly, many speakers have already raised this point, is that to cultivate ethical sensitivity. Now, in Hong Kong, up to this point, we are still having 2 key medical schools. There are many Hong Kong U students here, and indeed, I'm also a Hong Kong U alumni. But well, each year, we have a meter for each medical school. We have around 300 students. Okay, so basically, the structure is that I think since 2012, that we start to adopt a 6-year medical curriculum. So basically, 3 years of preclinical and also 3-year clinical curriculum. Now, we start to, I think the bioethics curriculum kind of like around 10 years ago. Okay, and also because eventually the medical students will be registered, okay, with the license, and the Hong Kong Medical Council indeed has devised and also constructs this Hong Kong doctor as a guideline, okay, and indeed like a teaching, okay, for the medical school to think about, okay, how to evaluate our graduates. And indeed, in particular, like in the previous version, 2017 versions, that it basically had listed out, okay, include a set of essential attributes and skills in addressing the medical dilemmas and also moral difficulties. And indeed, the Hong Kong doctor is undergoing a revision, and the new version will be coming probably in this year. That is explicitly also emphasize the elements of humanity and to measure the core competency, okay, including the bioethics as core competency expected of medical graduate, understanding the ethical and legal perspective of medical practice. Now, so then, CUHK, a relative younger medical school, 44 years, Hong Kong, 138 years already. So when we compare the curriculum structure, basically, even though the wordings or the way that we package the curriculum will be a little bit like, in terms of wording, like differences, but indeed, in terms of the content, they are quite similar. Okay, so students who are in Hong Kong U, okay, correct me if I'm wrong. So this is actually from your faculty's website. So in Hong Kong U, the ethics curriculum is mainly in charge by the School of Clinical Medicine and also the Medical Ethics and Humanities unit. But indeed, they divide the curriculum into 2 parts. One is the Medical Ethics and Law, and the other one is Medical Humanities. And obviously, that they have an emphasis on the legal perspective, okay, medical legal perspective. Okay, and but then the curriculum, the different topics span across different years of the medical training, from year 1 to year 6. And for the CHK, we also arrange the curriculum in the preclinical and also the clinical part. So we have the 3 bioethics courses, okay. We have the 3 bioethics courses, okay, to cover the basic principles and also moral theories, and also equip them with the skills to do the ethical analysis. And eventually, the law and medicine module will be in the first clinical year, and then followed by the clinical rotation. So basically, we have the ethics component integrated to the clinical rotation as one of the very core elements. Now, the CHK bioethics curriculum has a history because we start with a partnership with the Columbia University, which we honor that a lot because the experts from the Columbia University, basically, they fly to Hong Kong and also work with us to construct the bioethics curriculum. And year by year, so basically, preliminary that they spend 6 years with us, okay, to construct the bioethics curriculum year by year. And also they spend 1 and 2 years to help us to fine tune. But just unfortunately, that 1 or 2 years that it overlapped with the COVID, so basically interrupt some of the physical travel. But and also we also got a chance to work with those scholars that it also helped us to build our capacity in teaching about ethics. Now, however, when we try to work out the curriculum, of course, I think both the curriculum of the CHK and also the Hong Kong Youth are very, very comprehensive. And indeed, when we run through our own set of curriculum, even though it is up to now 10 years, that we still keep on revising and reviewing the curriculum. For one of the reasons is exactly what Julia just mentioned earlier, is that, well, we adopt or we try to figure out this curriculum, we construct this curriculum based on a university in the States. Okay, and then all the cases and also the references that we use are based on the US law, and also they are actually Western cases as well. We may lack an element of local context, okay, and also maybe Confucianism, right? So when we talk about moral theories, that how much we touch on Confucianism, maybe a little, but not really extensive, right? So basically, there are still things that we find it quite challenging is that the students' perception of bioethics, not just about the topics, but also when we teach them, because the curriculum is arranged in a very intensive format. This is unavoidable because the medical curriculum is by nature very packed. And so the students see that you have the privilege to have a gap year and take a master program is really, really unfortunate. But then naturally it's really packed, right? So basically we can only squeeze sometimes, I would say, to make it a very systematic curriculum spent through the 6th year. But very often, we always having a message to students that, oh, you have to discuss, there's no right and wrong. And the students, since they go through the local training and also undergoing a system that is highly competitive, they always demand for right and wrong, okay? No gray area. And also, they may want to, they usually have a mindset, what is the perfect answer I can get? Right? So then when this is not benefiting for discussion, because when we try to think, okay, you're not thinking from your perspective. You're trying to think from, say, how can I get a high score? From a teacher's perspective, yeah. That's true. So I think the roles of teachers are very important because you are guiding your student the way to think, right? And this is very, very important and tricky as well. So no right or wrong, and also it's unlike science subjects like preclinical or clinical sciences. There's no scientific right and basically quite philosophical to a certain extent. And these students, when they were admitted to the medical school, they don't have really much philosophy background. Usually they have science background. So it's quite challenging for them to appreciate the value of bioethics in such an intensive manner. And also they're uncertain about the application. And very often they demand for, so have early clinical exposure so that I can know, okay, how you can apply. But usually this is not the case. We know that it's so busy in the hospital and they may not be involved in the decision-making process. So basically, what they can know from the clinical experience to understand bioethics in such an early year is quite limited. Now, another thing is that because these students are really, really young, because I mainly talk from the perspective of preclinical science, because I know that in the clinical rotations that they have more robust, and also with the bedside training, that the training is all more robust and also more integrative. But from a preclinical perspective, that the students are so young, okay, and it takes time for them to really learn and also accumulate experience to reflect on these processes. And when you talk about end of life, okay, dignity dining, the students even comment, okay, my grandma is still very young, and they have empathy, but they cannot really feel that because they're really, really too young. And also, as I mentioned earlier, it's requirement of the local context, but at the same time, we need them to appreciate the transcultural experience, and also it's very intensive by nature. So these are basically challenges that I think in terms of the curriculum design and also arrangement. So this is a very brief, I think this is an extract from a paper of our former colleague, which was published, I think, in 2018 or 20. So basically, it lists out the areas that we cover in our bioethics curriculum, philosophical foundation, doctor-patient relationship, and healthcare delivery. For this part, obviously, that it is more useful when it is covered in a clinical setting. Emerging biotechnologies, but however, the student may also criticize, so I don't have interest to conduct research, okay? I may be interested only in clinical research. So emerging technology may not be so relevant to me, okay? Or maybe they just comment in a very superficial way, like CRISPR. Okay, they may definitely comment that, oh, there are so many uncertainties about CRISPR and definitely not recommend something like that. Instead of really criticize, is it due to the experimental design or any other things that may make it more complex instead of just the technology on its own? So I would like to share this slide is to make a reference or comparison with the previous very abstract one. Is that these are the topics that we put up. Indeed, it really spent 10 years to arrange them in this way. We have phased out, phased in different topics, because at the very beginning, when we adopt the curriculum, the hidden message is that because the curriculum is very packed, and then we can only teach things in a very topical way. And we find that it's not benefiting the students to really conduct a detailed analysis. And the students even comment that, oh, they don't feel they are confident or equipped with adequate skills to make critical analysis because they lack experience, okay? So therefore, it's really evolved with time that we start with the principles and also spending more time allowing them to really criticize and also discuss within their peers and theories, and then we escalate to more topicals like beginning of life issue, emerging technologies, and then with medical U3, since they are more close to the clinical years that with high clinical relevance, like end of life care. Now, as I've emphasized that the age of the student is quite crucial, okay? But I think the Hong Kong education system is no big different when compared with the other countries. Still, like we spend so many years in primary and then high school, so totally like maybe 6 + 3 + 6, okay? And then it's quite similar in structure. Now, can we comment that when the students, after they would get admitted to university, is this still too early for them to study ethics, or is this too late for them to study ethics, right? Because we're talking about value reflection, right? And these values could be imprinted or start to establish since one at the very beginning, at early age, right? So when they admitted to the university already, you are already 17 or 18 years old. So you're an adult already. So some of the values could be quite established, and it may not be easy to change. So, and also, because in the medical school that we have to use English as the medium of instruction. And even though all the medical students who get admitted to a medical school, they're excellent in English, but it doesn't mean that they feel comfortable to discuss ethics in English. Because as I said, there are many new terms that they have to learn, and they are actually quite relevant to their daily life. And they feel more confident and comfortable to maybe comment in Cantonese. So, very often we may hear the comments from students, can I discuss, okay, in Cantonese, okay, and also they are just different kind of languages when compared with my science subjects. And most importantly, okay, the students always feeling hesitant to participate is that they don't want to be put under the spotlight because I don't want to comment anything wrong and then being criticized by the others. Okay, so this is not benefiting the bioethics education or the establishment of their ethical knowledge indeed. Get a perfect answer. And also, usually, even though we construct different kinds of activities, a very often comment that we receive from a student is that, yes, I know that eventually I need to make a decision, but I don't want to make a decision if I have the choice. I don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to make decisions. So my question is that how can we better prepare these students when they transit from the preclinical to the clinical, when they need to really go to a bedside service? How can we better prepare them so that they can feel confident, and also they are having a rigor that basically can feel confident to criticize and also making decisions. So another thing is about the way that we deliver. Now, obviously, at the very beginning, we have a mix of lectures and also tutorials as the teaching activities, and are still very robust. But however, with the emerging technology, and also because of the COVID as well, right? And many of the students become online learner, and start to ask a question: what is the difference between a viewer and a learner? A viewer is that you can view YouTube, you can view the recorded lecture, right? But how active that you are really learning? Are you just absorbing things like a sponge, or you try to criticize and also think in more detail when you just view the lectures? So we are also determined to switch most of our lectures to online, but to replace this in-class time to become like case-based learning, team-based learning in class activities. So there are many exciting things that basically we have introduced and also move on throughout these 10 years. For instance, like instead of just focusing on the introducing bioethics in the medical curriculum, we also embrace the importance of interprofessional collaboration. So in the basically, this is an initiative that we start from in the coming year, is that we integrate the students from different programs: nursing, pharmacy, Chinese medicine, public health, biomedical sciences, and medicine, together to have a really big group. I mean, they will be split into smaller group, but with a mix of different students, so that they can really experience or try to have a taste of teamwork from different disciplines, and also to study ethics together. And as well, we also introduce diversified and learning activities. You may realize that there are a few, photos on the top of that. This is basically a museum, which is called a Mind Space, located in the Castle Beat Hospital, Hong Kong Museum of Medical Science, and also the Tonghua Coffin Home. Okay, so we will ask the student, okay, and give them some guideline to visit this museum and try to have some reflection, some activities, do it together, which we hope to groom not just about the compassion, humanity, but also they try to learn these together in the group. And as well, apart from the formal teaching, we also try to introduce like non-formal teaching formats, like engaging students to maybe produce a newsletter about bioethics, and also engaging students in some of our community outreach with the trainer-trainer model. And as I said, like the students are too young, okay, to experience elderly or experience aging. That I think something like this dignity dining workshop is quite useful, okay, and also not just teach them theoretically how it's feel when one cannot swallow properly, but they can really experience that how to become a caretaker, okay, and also in what way that they can do it better for the patient. So apart from that, now with the AI, okay, obviously we have to ask the question: is reflective essay still a very good assessment format in bioethics? Because this is something that we try to train students to make argument, right? Now, indeed, I think it applies to all courses that unavoidably you will, if your university has an AI detection engine, that you may pick some students who may have an AI index 100% or over 80%, okay? Now, how can we do? We just send them to discipline action? Well, I have a different philosophy. So in a recent conversation with some students that I picked them out with 100% AI, I try to ask them, okay, can you tell me like whether you have used AI? Obviously, usually they say no, okay? And then they may eventually declare that, oh, I have used ChatGPT or the Grammarly to perfect my writing, okay? And then I said, you just put your original writing into a public domain, okay, and now become recognized as the AI generator. So is it worth that? I mean, this is originality. I mean, that also helps to let a student know that basically they may overlook, okay? They may embrace the technological advancement, but however, they may overlook the impact, okay, that it brings. And similarly, if it applies to the clinical setting, so is this something that you just want to rely on? You have to criticize, okay, the strengths and weaknesses of these technologies as well. Now, having experienced all these, okay, as a teacher in the medical school, I also try to ask myself is that, well, the values of the student has already been established, and of course, we still believe bioethics is a core things that we have to introduce in the medical curriculum to train them to become a responsible and ethical doctor, right? But however, many of the people are still general public. And then bioethics education may not be so accessible. And if we want to promote public engagement, also conversation, what we can do more. And this is why I try to think about how can we promote a dialogue in bioethics at the early stage of education. And by coincidence, I read an article from Dr. earlier that it basically, he shares something that indeed I also think about is that I feel as the teacher or in a university, we can serve as a bridge, okay, between education, right, at the university and also the community. So what I have quote here is that Taiwan, okay, Dr. Al wrote that in Taiwan, bioethics is covered in life education in the high school curriculum. So that means that bioethics is not just only start in the university level, but also starting from the high school curriculum, and in some countries, even in the secondary school curriculum as well. And we don't have to be afraid of saying, well, is it a boring or purely academic subject? Basically not, but it needs to be openly discussed. And bridging the past and future, as a quote, okay, that bioethics is the bridge that crucial for navigating a future where technological progress could have profound and potentially detrimental impacts on both human well-being and the environment. That also further proves that a dialogue and also discussion is so important. But however, we don't have to, when introducing public education, we don't have to prove that how useful bioethics is. What we have to do is just to promote a dialogue and discussion. So we start from, after the COVID has, lifted, that we start to introduce some outreach activities. This is an example that I would like to quote, is that because this is actually my alma mater, a secondary school, and this is a school with the Buddhist background, Buddhism. Okay, and when I discussed with the teacher what kind of activities I can run and what kind of topics that the student may be interested in, and also the teachers may be accepted, because this is a school with the religious background. Is there any topics that are very sensitive? And most importantly, this is a school, you can see there's no boys, only girls. This is a girls' school. So we start, this is the first secondary school outreach that we have did, and we start with the topic about the beginning of life and also abortion. And surprisingly, the teachers are super receptive about this topic and very supportive. And the feedback from the students are quite good. And for this workshop, we have accommodated around 60-something students, and in group works. Now, after this first pilot, we have extended, our workshop to 200 students, also senior from our school, which is also very successful. We also quite committed to the public education, movie screening. And with all these pilots, we start to engage students indeed to also organize some of these questions. An example is the debate, which the university and medical student arranged for the secondary school students. And now we have systematically make it a robust and also a very important part of our center, is that we recruit students from the university as the bioethics bridge builders, the student delegates program. So we have just, this activity having the inauguration last month, which was quite successful. Originally, we believe we could mainly recruit students from medical school, but surprisingly, we have students from psychology, Master of Nursing, Public Health, Chinese medicine as well. So you can see that basically our students are quite, there are a group of students that is quite interested in this area. And what we would like to give the student is that we are not trying to give them a platform to do social service. We try to give them a platform to co-create something that can identify a problem in society and also try to contribute in society. So my conclusion is that students basically can benefit from a bioethics curriculum in a local context and also with the transcultural experience. We try to make the bioethics curriculum more suitable for our local context by accommodating different activities at the early stage of the bioethics curriculum, and can better engage the students, having different kinds of activities and also introducing even some kind of, new teaching platforms and also technology in our teaching. And we also try to unleash the power of students by engaging them as partners and also co-creation of activities, which I think, I hope that this sharing may be useful, and also we can have more exchange about your experience in education. Thank you very much.
We will now have the third speaker, which is Dr. Ardita PRAMUDANI, lecturer at the Universitas Diponegoro, presenting Integrating Pancasila into Bioethics Education, Reflections on Indonesia Medical Training and Moral Challenges. May I have Dr. PRAMUDANI, please?
So I know we're on critical time here because it's nearing lunchtime. So I'm just gonna echo, and hopefully I can introduce you on how do we do bioethics in Indonesia. But before that, so Indonesia is very large. It's the fourth most populous country in the world, just behind India, China, and United States. We have 281 million lives, and we are the largest Muslim population in the world with 247 million, or 88.21%. And we are a multi-faith country. We recognize 5 religion and 1 spiritual, which is Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Confucianism. And we also have 800 local dialects. So if you can see as the poster here, or I just point here then. So I'm from a region called Central Java. And Java, this island, is the most populous and where the central government is. So can you imagine that when I live in Central Java, I have to go to Jakarta through West Java, and it's probably only like 80 kilometers, and when they say their local dialect, I do not understand a word of it, but we're still Indonesians. So that's why the founding father, right? So that's why we have Bahasa Indonesia, or Indonesia language, as our national language to unite us. So let me take you to the timeline of Indonesia. Disclaimer, this is not a history class, but just to, give you some context. So Indonesia, well, we started prehistorically. We have animism and dynamism, in which we believe that, we see spirits in natural things, and we believe that also objects and places hold supernatural power. And then the early migrations and the Indian influences, they brought Hinduism and Buddhism to the country, and it's through agrarian and knowledge transfer. And then fast forward to the 7th and 14th century, we had Buddhist and Hindu kingdoms throughout the country, and this was the most powerful, the Srivijaya kingdom that expands up until Malaysia. We used to call it the Malayan Straits, I believe. And the Majapahit Empire, which take up not only Java, but the whole country, the whole side of the country. And then, yes, fast forward, with the European colonial era, we then progressed with education. We were in the middle of the battle between Portuguese, we had Spanish too, we had the Dutch, and we had British competing for our spices. But then the Dutch eventually governed through the Dutch East India Company. It's like their trading part of the government. And later, the Dutch East Indies. So with the education progressed with these, with the Dutch colonialism, we had a rise of national awakening. And it started actually from the medical school, which I will get into that. And it actually triggered that these diverse groups to unite for anti-colonial movement and shaping pluralistic national identity, emphasizing in education, language unity, and social solidarity. And fast forward to 1945, we declared independence after Japanese occupation, and the founding fathers adopted Pancasila. They were thinking, wait, hold on, there's a lot of communities. How do we get them not to fight? Because apparently even the local dialects are different. So that's why they adopted the 5 principles that allow space for religious and cultural diversity. So yeah, actually what is interesting is that these progress started from medical school. So because there was an epidemic in Banyumas, one of the region in Central Java, one of the Dutch the Dutch military authority proposed to train natives because they said, we are lacking of doctors here and we cannot bring more people from the Netherlands, it's just too far. So what they did is that he proposed a medical school, and the first medical school, Dr. Jawa, was founded in 1847, and initially they used Malay language. But then, because the amount of training that the Dutch need to do to learn the language, they shifted again to Dutch. So initially Malay, and then doing Dutch language again, making it harder for natives to enroll, because they then have to go through secondary school and then about to learn Dutch first before they can take the medical school exam. So yeah, a national awakening often emerges in mobile merit-based societies. The medical school that was initiated opened gates for people to exchange knowledge, to know what is happening outside of the country. So medical schools introduced modern science, institution, and political ideas. And training in medicine became a gateway to nationalist thinking. Doctors like Cipto and Wahidin linked healing with social reform. And these doctors in this era used organic metaphors like sick nation, body politic to frame the political struggle that Indonesia is going. So their professional status gave them moral legitimacy across ethnic and religious lines. So, ambiguity and resistance, Indonesian doctors and colonial society. The situation back then was tricky because they received education, they received all of this knowledge from people who is currently colonizing the country. And in 1901, finally, after 300 so years, they introduced an ethical policy, shifted from exploitation to paternalistic uplift, promoting education infrastructure. So the colonizer in 1901 realized that we cannot just take their spices, we need to give them something. So that's why they're more champion in how to treat in Dutch East Indies, at that time it wasn't even Indonesia yet, to be approached more humanly. But they didn't realize what they did actually created tension because they're more smarter, they're privileged, but then again, they're marginalized. So these ambiguity spark reflection on the colonial injustice and their civic role. So some doctors turned into nationalist politics, seeking to reform society beyond medicine. Like modern bioethicists, they navigated a space between technical expertise and moral responsibility. So these three, there's a lot of Indonesian doctors that could be role models, but these three specifically is the most well-documented one. We go from Dr. Wahidin Sudirohusodo, who, inspired by the Japanese victory over Russia, he fundraised native education, which led to Budi Utomo, the first nationalist movement. So he believed that doctors should serve not just health, but also justice and national dignity. And then we had Dr. Sutomo, who is the student of Dr. Wahidin Sudirohusodo. Together, they promoted education as a path to national consciousness. And he later studied in Amsterdam and came back to Indonesia, founded a political party. He saw education as the moral engine of national progress. And lastly, we had Dr. Cipto Mangunkusumo, a physician, civil servant, and anti-colonial critic, exposed injustice of the ethical policy in the Dutch press. And he co-founded a radical Indonesia Partai. He linked medical knowledge with civic leadership for an independent Indonesia. So yes, a couple of you asked, what is actually Pancasila, right? It's very foreign. So Pancasila is an ideology of the country, and it could serve as a moral compass for bioethic education. So to give you context how significant Pancasila is, it is in the cover of our passport, it is on the cover of our national identity card, and when you visit Indonesia, in some rooms, we actually have the logo in the rooms, and it's mandatory for government offices to have this bird. So Pancasila offers value to pluralistic, humanistic, socially just healthcare. The first principle, which is believe in God, means to have a religious pluralism, to admit there's religious pluralism in the nation. And we have a second principle, just and civilized humanity means that we want to have more dignity and compassion. We want to incorporate more the more of saying of society in decision making. And that is also coined by the third principle, the Union of Indonesia, voicing out cultural sensitivity, that even though we're different, we are still united by one, which is Indonesia. And democracy is the fourth principle that we can translate as we want to hear about the patient's voice, the community participation that has been echoed by Dr. Derek Au and Dr. Ann Lau. Like we want to have a medical doctors, workers in healthcare who listens, not only listen to the textbook and how to do it, but listen how the dynamic of the human relationship is when caring for the sick. And lastly, the fifth principle is social justice for all Indonesian people that we can translate as access to care, equity. How do we actually allocate resources when we are scarce of it? And if you see the bird, there's the one saying Bhinneka Tunggal Ika is derived of Sutasoma Kakawin. So it's a very, very ancient Javanese poetry book that said, that means although there is difference, there must be a union. So yes, like previous speaker said, Western bioethics alone is not enough, but they give us tools. They give us tools to be more eloquent on explaining, but without the local roots, they're incomplete. And in Indonesia, ethical practice, or if I may say, how do you live in the Indonesian society, we are guided by gotong royong, means communal care and shared responsibility. There's collective decision making, again, with families and elders and religious voices, and sometimes even our neighbors. And kinship and spiritual trust over clinical authority. And with this, that means that ethical competence is almost the same, we can also derive it from cultural competence, that we must teach context-aware ethics, not copy-paste, but co-created with local voices. So bioethics in Indonesia, at least I must say, must integrate with global standards with indigenous wisdom, just like the theme of the symposium today. And then the part of what is the moral challenges we're facing as Indonesian doctors. So doctors today face multiple ethical tension. We have science versus tradition, like countries that, there's evidence-based care, but we also clash with local beliefs and healing customs. We have efficiency and empathy, because I am a physician by training. I practice general medicine, and sometimes in our 6-hour shift, we have 80 patients. So how do you work in a time-pressured system that risks of giving a care that is depersonalizing? And there's central mandates and local trust. National programs often overlook community networks and cultural nuance. And there's also, lastly, is reform versus autonomy. Doctors face tension between institutions, for example, with the ministry of the FDA and between those government institutions and the collegium or academic freedom, especially in training and standards. So the deeper questions, are we preparing healers who can engage morally with pluralistic societies, or are we producing technicians optimized for biomedical sciences, but disconnected from cultural realities? So can doctors act ethically amid bureaucratic pressure and cultural complexity? And I think bioethics invites us to ask, what kind of moral compass do we expect from doctors? And how should bioethics education cultivate virtues like empathy, humility, and civic responsibility alongside clinical skills? So final reflection, a lofty hope, but a necessary one. When I created this slide, I actually thought hard, okay, what's the word that commonly comes up with bioethics? And I reflected last year when I graduated the MBE, the message of the leadership of the program said, bioethics could be seen as someone who is lofty or too idealistic, right? But it's necessary. It is necessary. Western ethical frameworks remain vital, but without local grounding, they feel incomplete. And because in Indonesia, ethical practice is intertwined with the society values, we often prioritize family and religious authority over individual autonomy. So the question would be, how do we balance all of that? And cultural competence is not separate from ethical competence. Doctors must understand how values are lived, not just learned. And we need to teach ethics that are context-aware, not as important blueprints, but as co-created reflection of our plural society. And the future of Indonesian bioethics lies in integration, collaboration, combining global standards with indigenous wisdom to guide care that is both just and humane. Thank you, and Ngoy Sai. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Dr. Pramudani. Well, we have to be efficient now, so we directly move on to the discussion part. So may I first invite Dr. Ann Lau to come up to the stage again, and then Dr. Pramudani, and then Dr. Rebecca BRENDEL to come up to the stage, and then we soon start the panel discussion.
Thank you both for two really important conversations, quite inspiring ones, about how do we, in the context of medical education in particular, bring forward both, or cultivate not just knowledge, but also practice and wisdom and personal growth, right? And I think both of you are drawing on a thread that for me comes through about this. I was going to fill in for Wes first, then we ran out of time, so we decided it wasn't necessary. But if I was going to make a point, if I were going to make one, what it was going to be about is how thinking through the problems and being analytic, I think this very much came through both culturally and in terms of the work that we do. So much of what came through is wanting to get the right answer, wanting to perform in a certain way, right? Wanting to have the most reasoned decision, both as a cultural norm in Hong Kong and but also this notion, and as you were talking about, is how do we develop, right, within that very structured context, how do we develop the key to discernment, to experience, right, to going beyond coming up with the right answer, right, to cultivating the kinds of experiences and the wisdom, and I might even say the affective states that prepare us and create an ability to be open to the kind of work we need to do. And then, you know, Ardita, I think I agreed with what you said. I can't vouch for the history, so I'll take your word on that. But what I can say is, I think I agreed until that very last point where you said the Western principles were really important. Because, you know, one other view of that is that we really constrain our ability, as Anne was talking about, going to museums. And there's been also in the West this real resurgence in the importance of humanities in the work of bioethics, right? So we're looking to capture something that somehow gets missed when we try to circumscribe and quantify and be thinking about the knowledge itself and the reason behind it. And so, you know, what would I would just posit to all of us if we were going to step back away from our colonial histories, right? And we were going to think about the kinds of values that that were there, that imbued life, right, before this this colonial notion. This is true going back even in our very young, even in my very young country, right, to indigenous peoples, a commitment to a life that's part of a cycle, right? The importance of places, the importance of experiences, the importance of community, the environment, right? Cultivating what we might now call virtues, but we know to be something that's within us and about the way we engage with each other and about society. So, you know, sometimes I take a little bit of heat for overemphasizing the affective experience of this, and as a psychiatrist, I do suppose it is an occupational hazard. But I think it's really important that as we come to the end of this panel, we go back to where we started, which was this, you know, my own becoming quite overwhelmed with emotion and at the beginning, right, about what it means to be in these spaces together, and to create the kinds of communities that foster our humanity, and maybe when we do this next year, because Roger's already planning over there. So when we think about, you know, going forward, thinking about really starting there, right? About how is it that ethics can actually be helpful to us, not as a priori about what it means to live a life well and to treat others with dignity and to care, but about how if we start with presence and with care, and with our humanity and interconnectedness, what would that look like for what we think of bioethics of the future should be, not just for us, but for our students and for the values of the profession. So I'm going to stop. So that was my whole talk in just a couple of minutes. But maybe what I'd start with each of you is if there were one thing that you would want to do, totally experimental or different, or a thought that you think of in the middle of the night, perhaps, what would you want to see in future doctors? Or what would you want to expose them to that could really capture the very rich ideas you're both talking about, right? So, and how do we do a better job of that? Because, you know, Anne, as you said, this is a problem everywhere. Real estate is really, really expensive and hard to find in a medical school curriculum because we're advancing our science so much, right? And we do spend all this time talking about the technology and about the science and what we can do, but not so many questions about what we ought to do. So I'll leave that with the two of you.
Thank you, Becca. I think that's a really comprehensive and cohesive to put it all together. But to go back to your question on what do I really want to see on future doctors is, I think number one is curiosity. How do they ask questions? I mean, the one that you saw, the names, the complicated names, Wahidin, Sudirohusodo, Sutomo, those people are our hospitals' names. So our hospitals are mostly named by national heroes. But when I talk to the students, who I was a student too, they don't really know why. Why is this hospital named by that person? What did this person do to have his name on the national hospital? And for them to spark their curiosity, where does it come from? I think that's something that I really want to see. And how do we incorporate that? Just like Dr. Ann Lau's work, take them to the museums, incorporate social medicine. What is the root of medical school in Indonesia? I think I would like to see that more. Thank you.
Well, for me, I think bioethics is a journey of exploration, reflection, and also communications as well. So if, say, I can experience or I can experiment something that I really want to, first of all, indeed, I don't want to really construct a framework or something that I force the students to do. I want to work with them. Because after all, the student was fed up by different kinds of courses, curriculum, etc. If you just ask them to learn because of a course that they just reluctant and also have a bad image for that. But I feel like with the experience of really co-creation, engage students to work on something is really crucial because they will appreciate the process. And also they can learn to communicate. And after all, what I would like to bring about communication is that if, say, we consider bioethics, eventually they go to the clinic, right? They will learn how to communicate with patients. But however, when they are younger, that you will find that actually they don't know how to communicate with the peers, even to resolve conflict as well. So I think bringing together to exchange and also brainstorming, even across different culture, right? Like what you're doing now, right? With scholars from different countries, like why not we can copy, okay, this platform to become one for the students as well. I think yes, maybe this is something we can do.
That's really a wonderful place to get us started. Any questions?
Thank you. Hi, thank you for the talk. This was really interesting. So I'm a third-year medical student from the University of Hong Kong. And last year, I went to this Lancet Commission on Nazi medicine and professional identity formation. One of the debates was about the use of AI when it comes to submitting to questions in bioethics and like cultural competency. One of the professors said that they would accept answers written by ChatGPT, as long as the student find themselves in the words of the answers. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this liberal approach to the use of AI? Do you think it's like inevitable that this is the future of assessing, professional identity formation or values?
What's your thoughts about AI?
Okay, so, well, I think it's impossible, or it's getting increasingly impossible for us to figure out whether or not students are using AI if they don't tell us that they are, right? Like you can tell some certain stylized pieces of it. This is happening absolutely everywhere, right? So in the medical school ethics curriculum we're developing in Rwanda at the University of Global Health Equity, the students are, the faculty, the US-based faculty was there and they said, wow, you know, they were commenting to the dean, your students are the best writers we've ever seen. And the dean was like, well, but that doesn't really make a lot of sense because it's just not one of the core competencies that the students learn, right? So we're getting it all, I mean, I think we're getting it all wrong to think that these eloquent answers have to be the answer to doing the moral work of being in the healing professions, right? So we assessed it because we could. We got into writing lots of papers, but really what we want to get down to is the core of how we bring the experience and the humanity together in some way that we can learn lessons from, right? So, you know, this whole thing about, I picked on Ardita a little bit, but only because she knows how much I love her. But the whole idea of principles, right? You know, when we teach our students, we start with the principles and we start based on a purely phenomenologic argument, which is that we're gonna start with the principles because people use them because they work well enough, right? And we figure out all the reasons why the principles are helpful, why principles in general can be helpful to us. And then we say, okay, so like, what are all the problems? And one of the problems with principles is just like anything else, you can argue yourself into a paper bag and out of a paper bag, and principles themselves can become an oppressive force of reinforcing a dominant viewpoint too, right? So, so how does that tie into AI? You know, AI could do one of two things. It could democratize knowledge. I mean, that's the way we thought it was going 10 or 15 years ago when we called this, when we talked about conceptions of citizen science, right? And crowdsourcing, right? Or it could consolidate, as it seems to be. If anyone heard the Pope give his first big lecture on, we could argue about whether or not the Catholic Church itself is an institution of power for good or has had some other issues like every institution. But aside from that, right, what the Pope was talking about was this notion that we've got to make a really big decision, right? It's not a question about regulating just the harms, but we have really big decisions to make about whether we're going to democratize or we're going to consolidate power and money through AI technology. And right now, it looks to the latter, right? And so what the Pope was doing and speaking out about the tech companies is really saying there is some responsibility here to do something different. So whether or not, you know, we were thinking about how to do this, right? So, you know, do you say, okay, get the AI answer and then tell us what you think about it, right? Or, you know, and do we combine that? You know, many in the room are looking at experiential learning. You and I spent time also in Poland last fall learning on the ground through experience about some of the really painful lessons of Nazi experimentation. I think it's a both and, right? I think we need to figure out how to be human again in a hyper-technological age and not think that the fact that we're imperfect, right, is a problem, but actually to realize that those of us who focus on our failures and try to get better at them actually probably can become quite extraordinary in the world. So that was a very, very long answer to your question that probably didn't actually answer your question. But I gave my colleagues some time to think about what they wanted to say in response.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, we don't have to now. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thanks a lot for Dr. Law, Dr. Ardita's introduction about bioethics development in Indonesia and in Hong Kong. Yes. My question is, from the above description or speech, I have learned some actions Hong Kong's bioethical knowledge, science, wisdom, advancement in Hong Kong's community. On the basis of this, is there any action promoted by ethics, science, wisdom into Indonesia's community? And the doctor from Harvard Medical Center, BRENDEL, is there more advanced experience about this aspect? Thank you.
Okay, so if I understand your question well, is that what kind of actions should we take in bioethics training, and what can we learn from each other, actually, from the presentations, especially from right now that we're in Hong Kong? So I think the number one answer is collaborating, because we are all learning. We're all learning from each other. And when I went back from Harvard and I talked to the leadership, the one thing that I brought to them is rules of the road. Number one, we are all human. And I know that I feel nervous in front of Becca, because throughout the year we have to read in every class. So if I forget, I'm sorry, Becca. But those principles that I learned from Harvard was actually the one that we need to take action upon. So not only, again, echoing that, not only we know the historical roots, but the existing principles. What can we learn to each other? What can we move forward with? And as an Indonesian institution, we've been talking a lot with other institutions, because the medical education in Indonesia not only involves the university, but it involves other governmental institutions. So we, at academia at least, we're really trying to foster it, how to make space of discussion. That's why we're bringing Rebecca BRENDEL and the rest of the group to help us make space and facilitate these discussions with each other on a neutral ground. Thank you.
So I think you asked me what I learned by being here and in this, but let me say that the day before, so we've been doing some bioethics for the past few days, but the day, I think it was only 2 days ago, but maybe it feels like a lifetime ago. But 2 days ago, we began our journey with dear Mr. Gerald Lee at a monastery, and really letting go of preparing ourselves for this by really letting go of our encumbrances, finding our presence, thinking broadly about opening up our minds and our spirits and our souls. And it was extremely powerful. I left really thinking about the power of metaphor, and I think being in Hong Kong, it has been a really special place. I've never been before, to start doing this exploration on a personal level and for our shared work together, as a place that's been a crossing point of the world, a meeting point of East and West, and a place where there has been this very complex and interwoven and very beautiful combination of cultures, of religions, of peoples, and of lives. And if there's anything that needs to set the stage for our work, it is setting the stage and creating the space and building the connections that can allow us to do this very complicated work about defining and redefining what it means to be human when technology is threatening to take us over at every turn.
Sounds fine. Thank you all.
Definitely, this is definitely an ongoing process. I fully agree. Okay, so thank you, Rebecca. Okay, thank you, Ardita.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for staying here, even after the lunch hours. We'll still have a bit of a closing remark, so stay with us. So please bear with us.
So I think I have only one more thing to say is thank you so much to Anne, to Roger, to CUHK for making it possible for all of us to be here in the same room doing this work together today. A huge debt of gratitude for our students. It's really heartwarming and overwhelming to see so many current and former students in the room. And in a way, we're all learning always together, and you push all of us to continue to do this work so that we can have a bright future and move forward. You know, those of us who are physicians especially, at a time when we're really thinking about what the moorings of our own callings are, to really be doing this work in advancing the human spirit and condition. So thank you to all of you. See you next time this year.
Wow.
Next year, this place, this time.
Well,
welcome
actually,
to-
some of our colleagues are asking if this is going to be, held annually. Is that what you guys want?
Stay tuned on all of Roger's social media outlets.
LinkedIn, social media. We have our QR codes at the back of our leaflets, but very importantly, I think today we have talked about all these wonderful ideas. It's not about being perfect. It's not just about the principles. We go beyond the principles. We acknowledge and we try to balance all these moral pluralism in our increasingly globalized world. And and in order to do that, we need to have epistemic and cultural humility. In order to be curious and to be compassionate, to respect and to be empathetic, we need that kind of humility, right? And so that we can put humanities at the heart of what we do, and redefining what it means to care. So last but not least, before I hand it over to Anne with a very important announcement, there's one thing that we put on the back of our pamphlet brochure. What can we do, or what can you do for bioethics during a time of shifting order? That's a question that we would like to pose to all of you. We were having some conversation during break time. Yeah, so, what we just talked about is really just methodology, okay? But I'm sure everyone who are here today are invested intellectually or in your day-to-day operation on bioethics and medical ethics. So please ask yourself, what can you do in your position, in your role and responsibilities for a better future? Thank you very much.
Yes, so to continue, we are here because we feel this is very important things of our life. This is something that we try to hold it up. So I think this kind of collaboration is so important. So I would like to extend my really heartfelt appreciation to our partner Harvard Medical School Center for Bioethics.
Please give a big hand to Becca. She hasn't stopped talking ever since she got to Hong Kong, and you will not stop talking for another week, right? I'm so sure. I'm so sorry.
I think you do as well. But also for everyone who travel along from your countries to Hong Kong to join this symposium. I think this is a very good start, and we believe that this will be continued. Okay, and because that we will have to build this together in the future, right? So with that, maybe we can adjourn this symposium. But the last thing I would like to advertise is about for participants in Hong Kong, you may not, or you may aware that it's a Hong Kong Bioethics Association. So we would like to advertise this association a little bit, and we will send our invitation to you to join this association as a member. Okay, and we will have a bunch of activities, very exciting, and stay tuned for further update.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you.